Hello and welcome into the Addison the 35th podcast. My name is Ryan Herrera. I'm your host for this Cubs episode of the Addison the 35th podcast. And as I sit here on Friday, June 13th, you guys, this is after the Cubs Pirates game. You guys will probably be listening to this on Saturday, but yes, this is after the Cubs drop the first game or the second game of that series, 2-1 in the 10th inning. That's obviously not an ideal scenario, dropping games to the Pirates, but teams lose games to teams that are just below them in the standings all the time. Like that kind of stuff happens, and I'll admit, like it's not a great loss, and we'll get more into it, but or they've split the first two games of this series against the Pirates. They went 2-4 on the road trip prior to that. But you know what? They're 42 and 28. They're still in first in the National League Central, up on Milwaukee by 4.5 games, and the rest of the division. Beyond that, they have the fourth best record in the major leagues right now. They're second in the National League at record wise, and they're still in a good spot. It's mid June now. They're what was that 70 games into the season now. So I understand some of the angst more recently with some of the games, especially with the way that the offense has kind of performed. Um, as of right now, and this is at the end of the day, they still are third as a team, third in the national or third in the major leagues in WRC plus. They've still scored the second most runs. They have the fourth highest OPS among all the 30 teams. So the offense overall on the season has been really good. Maybe not as much more recently, but you also have to realize like in the last 9 or 10 days, something like that. They faced Mackenzie Gore, Tarek Skubal, Jack Flaherty, who's been doing a lot better probably in the last month or so. Zach Wheeler, Jesus Luzardo, and then Paul Skeens today. So that's a nice line of pitchers, and I get that these are the guys they're going to face, or not these guys specifically, but pitchers of this caliber are guys they're going to face in the postseason. That's obvious, but that is a nice line of starting pitchers they've had to face, and it hasn't like tanked their season, right? I think they've actually done decently well against some of those guys. Some of those guys shut them down, but they have faced a lot of good pitching more recently, and maybe that's caused the offenses not have their best days, of course. But I think this is still a good offense from the top down. You have guys contributing, different guys contributing on a daily basis. Like you don't have that hole from the 7, 8, 9 hitters anymore. So I think while I understand some of the angsts over some of the more recent performances, I do think this is still a good team, a good offense, and they'll continue to show that. I believe over the rest of the season, they've played themselves into a very good position. Of course, it matters that they continue to keep playing at that level overall. Like you're going to have some clunkers here and there. You're going to have bad days at the office, but they have to be playing overall at the level they've showed they can play at, and they have played at for most of the season. So I of course you can't drop the series and to the Pirates, and even splitting it feels like would feel like a disappointment. So they got to go out and win these last two games, before Milwaukee comes to town next week. But I think they're in a good spot. The offense is still a good offense in my opinion, and we'll see kind of where they go from here. But that's where things stand right now. Still first in the NL Central, still one of the best records in the majors, and second in the National League, fourth best record in the majors. So now it's up to them to just kind of get back on a roll, right? I think they've done a pretty good job so far this year. I mean, they've lost some series, of course, but they haven't really gone on extended losing streaks. They've done a pretty decent job about turning the page after losses and stuff. So I kind of expect them to do that again, and we'll see where that goes. But where I wanted to start off, and if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the rundown here on the side of me. Cade Horton started today and looked pretty strong going up against Paul Skeens. Right, again, it was a 2-1 loss to the Pirates in the 10th inning, and the thing is, like Paul Skeens emerged last season, and I don't remember where he would have finished as far as Cy Young voting goes, but he's a Cy Young caliber pitcher. He's one of the best pitchers in the majors, and he proves that time and time again. You look at his numbers, you look at his stats, his metrics, like they're all really good. His pitch arsenal, his stuff, all really good. And I mean, in some ways, outdueled Paul Skeens today. And so here are their lines. Paul Skeens today, 5 innings pitched, 4 hits, 0 runs, 2 walks, and 5 strikeouts on 95 pitches. Whereas Cade Horton, 5 2/3 innings, 3 hits, no runs, a walk, and 4 strikeouts on only 76 pitches. So it has to be said that, of course, and I think this is entering today. Skeens was facing the team with the number 3 WRC plus in the majors, right, in the Cubs offense, and Horton was going up against the Pirates offense, who were number 29 in WRC plus. So that has to be taken under consideration. But again, when you think about the level that Paul Skeens is at and has been at for over a year now, whereas Cade Horton is 7 games, 6 starts into his major league career. Cade Horton impressed me, and I think he impressed a lot of people today with what he was able to do. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I don't have it in front of me again right now, but I want to say they both got the same amount of whiffs between Horton and Skeens, same amount of swings and misses, but on Horton was able to, he had a higher whiff rate, whereas Skeens, I think, so that would mean like same amount of whiffs, but Horton had those amount of whiffs and fewer swings, which in one way, again, is a testament to the Cubs offense. They made Paul Skeens throw a lot of pitches. I don't remember. I think maybe it was a 3rd inning or whatever where they made him throw a lot of pitches, and obviously they didn't score against him, so they didn't do that well. Like they didn't do the scoring, the actual point of the game, score runs. They didn't do that well against Skeens. They weren't able to get guys in, but they did a really good job of just making him throw pitches, getting into long counts, just upping the pitch count. And he's at 95 pitches through 5, right? Like you're talking about going up against a guy and like feeling like it would be really good if they could win on a day when they're facing Paul Skeens. They were able to get 4 innings, and then ended up being 5 innings against the bullpen, where they didn't do that great of a job against the bullpen either. And that's tough luck for an offense against a Pirates bullpen who's just, I don't think they're very good. But they did do a good job against Skeens and making him leave the game early, pretty much. Whereas Horton lasted longer in the game. I believe the situation at the end of the 6th inning, why he didn't finish that, was, I think, he had a runner on third. I want to say it was O'Neill Cruz or something, and he was only at 76 pitches. But that's where Craig Counsell decided to bring the lefty against whoever was at the plate. Was it maybe Brian Reynolds? I don't remember for sure, but it was a lefty on lefty matchup. No, I guess it wouldn't, because Reynolds is a switch hitter, but it was a lefty on lefty matchup, or would have been righty on lefty if he left Horton in. Counsell brought in Caleb Thielbar, so that's kind of why Horton's day ended early, but pretty efficient to get through 5 2/3 on just the 76 pitches. I think you like what you saw out of Cade Horton today, going up against the Pirates. Even though, again, the Pirates offense just isn't a very good offense, he did a good job, and he's still so early on in his career as far as the major leagues go. But he's shown a lot of good things, and I will also give the caveat that he faced the Mets with the help of an opener in his debut. Since then, he has faced the White Sox, the Marlins, the Rockies, the Nationals, and the Pirates, or the Tigers, and then the Pirates. So it's not like he's going up against the best lineups in baseball every time he goes out there. But he is a pitcher who is starting his career in the major leagues, facing teams with major league hitters, right? And he's doing a pretty good job against them. So now, like through 7 games, his 6 starts, he's 3-1, 3.47 ERA. He's got a 5.2% walk rate, which is actually just above Jameson Tyone. He's got a 19% strikeout rate, which, as he gets more in his career, you want to see that rise. I think he's got the stuff for that to rise. He's got really good velocity on the fastball. I think that's like in the top quarter percentile of the major leagues. And so you want to see that go up, of course. You want to see that rise significantly, but where he's at, and then he also has a 1.21 WHIP, which is actually a little bit lower than Matthew Boyd, who we've talked about. Matthew Boyd has been, obviously taking into account the fact that Shota Imanaga has been hurt for a while now. Matthew Boyd has the argument that he's been maybe the Cubs' best pitcher, or most consistent, most reliable pitcher so far this year. He's done a really good job, Matthew Boyd. and Cade Horton's whip is actually lower than Boyd's so far this year. So I think that's pretty good. I think that's good to see out of Cade Horton. I think overall you're not like blown away by his numbers and the way that Paul Skeens was doing as a rookie, but you are, I think, content and in some ways impressed and feel good about what Cade Horton's managed to do so far this season since the Cubs called him up. And I want to share this quote that I saw, what Cade Horton told reporters after the game today, and was about, the big moments, right? Like, again, facing Paul Skeens, a big time pitcher on the other side, and going up against that guy so early still in your career. And this is what he said. He said, "I'm not scared of the moment. I love the moment. Just going out there and competing. It's all about one pitch." I like that a lot. I like that mindset a lot from Horton. He has done. I mean, he's been, a big time prospect here for a while for the Cubs, but he has, he's pitched in the College World Series. Like, he made his debut in New York against the Mets, and then his next start was a big series against the White Sox at Wrigley, right? Like, he pitched in some big moments here. And then you even think about the fact that he was going to go play. It was a quarter. I think it was going to be a quarterback for Oklahoma when he went to college, and that ultimately didn't work out. But like, he would have been playing on big lights then, under big lights then, in big situations then. So uh, I like I like to hear Horton say out loud, like, "I am not scared of the moment." I think that's a great mindset for him for a young pitcher. So, still so young in his major league career, still trying to gain experience as a major leaguer, as a starting pitcher. And I really like that mindset. And, I can't wait to kind of see what he's able to do as he goes forward. I don't know where he's lined up to start. It might be, guess maybe it might not be that Brewers series, but I'm excited to see where Cade Horton kind of goes from here. How his major league career continues to develop, the trajectory that he's on. I think he's done a pretty good job so far. Coming up when the Cubs needed him to come up, they had some injuries in the rotation and needed another arm, another guy, and he's a guy that missed a lot of last season. I don't think he pitched from June on last season with I think it was a subscap. So it was an injury in his shoulder, his pitching shoulder. And so he didn't pitch a lot for the last couple months of the season last year. And he comes up and is doing a really good job in Iowa. And the Cubs decide, like, hey, we're in a spot where we need an arm and we believe he's ready. And he's come up and he's shown it so far. And so I really like the mindset. I like what he's been able to do so far this year. And I'm looking forward to seeing where he continues to go on this trajectory. But that kind of brings me to my next topic here. And that's what happens when Shota Imanaga returns from injury. So Shota's been on the IL. He's been out since early May, left hamstring strain. Was it Milwaukee that happened? He had his first rehab start with the Complex League Cubs, the Arizona Complex League ACL Cubs, on Monday. 2 innings. He gave up a hit, but no runs, no walks, 4 strikeouts. He threw 25 pitches, and then I think that he went and had more. Went into the bullpen and threw some more pitches to just kind of get to where they wanted him to get to in that outing or in that on that day. So he did throw a bullpen on Thursday was the update we got. And then I believe he's scheduled to throw another ACL Cubs game on Saturday. And then from MLB.com, this is where I got this part from, but the goal is to get Imanaga up to 3 innings or roughly 50 to 55 pitches in that appearance. And then from there, he'll likely move his rehab to AAA Iowa. So he's on the mend. He's on the way. I think the idea is that he should be, barring, a setback or whatever, should be ready to come back before the end of June, which is great. I mean, you're adding a really good pitcher, a guy who, if I'm not mistaken, was 5th in NL Cy Young voting last season. You're adding that guy back to the rotation, a guy who's proven himself to be a pretty good pitcher, right? Even still so young in his own Major League Baseball career. He obviously had a lot of experience pitching in Japan, but young in his Major League Baseball career, did a really good job last year, opened up a ton of eyes, and then, comes here this season, was still doing a good job for the most part, and then, goes down with the injury. So getting him back obviously inserts another really good arm into that rotation, at the top of that rotation. And then that's kind of where we get to what happens when he does come back, and then if that's in a couple weeks from now, what happens, right? I think there's obviously still time until that happens for things to kind of figure themselves out. I feel like that's kind of the thing around baseball, saying around baseball is that these things tend to work themselves out. And but I think it's still worth kind of considering like what will happen when Shota Imanaga does come back. How will they configure the rotation? How will that affect the bullpen? How will that affect the depth in the minor leagues? Like all that kind of stuff. And that's, I think, an important question to just continue to monitor. But so my questions are like the number one, like I guess we'll just tie it back to Horton, right? Again, I think he's done a really good job coming up in a pinch when they needed an arm, maybe a little bit sooner than they would have wanted him to come up. Maybe they wanted him to have a few more starts, get some more innings under his belt at AAA before he came up, but they needed him to come up. He's done a good job. That still begs the question of, will Horton be the one that gets optioned? Or like that's an easy thing to do as far as when you lose that arm on the major league roster, but he's optioned to AAA. He is still kind of one phone call away or if and or when something else happens to a guy in the rotation. I don't know right now if that's the route the Cubs will decide to go on because he's been pitching pretty well. So that remains to be seen if that's the route they go down. Another guy is, Ben Brown. Could he be the one that goes down? He gets optioned, stay stretched out. I mean, he had a couple pretty good starts recently. It was against the Reds and then the Tigers, and those were good to see. But then he also he's just had his starts, and I think this was, I don't remember what day it was against the Phillies, but he just had his starts where he falls victim to the big inning. And sometimes that's the first inning, and that's putting the team in a hole they have to dig themselves out of early on in the game. He's had that problem, that issue in some of his starts this year, where the team just kind of get a big inning out of him. He's not able to get out of it, and just has to work and work and work to finally end that. And so I think on one hand, like that could be the guy. I don't think you put Ben Brown into the bullpen. I think the way you look at him right now is still as a starter. And if he's the odd man out in the rotation when Shota comes back, you send him down, you let him stay stretched out in AAA, and just kind of wait until either he shows you like, hey, bring me back up, like you need me on the staff right now, or he's another injury replacement. That's one hand. But on the other hand, like he's got great stuff. He's got pretty good velocity on his fastball, really good breaking ball, gets a ton of whiffs. He's got really good strikeout rate, pretty solid walk rate. Like he's got a lot of things that like this staff just doesn't necessarily have overall. Again, the velo, the nasty breaking ball, as far as like starting pitchers go, and I mean that more specifically with the velocity, because he can get up there. He can get up there with the fastball, and I don't know what the best thing for him is. Like, I think he's another guy that's kind of like there's not really much left for him to prove at the AAA level. Like he should be up in the major leagues developing into that starter if that's what he's going to eventually become. Like he's kind of earned that with the way he performed down there. And last year, when he came up and had his bright spots for sure. So yeah, it's kind of tough to determine just what to do with Ben Brown if that's the route the Cubs decide to go down when Shota Imanaga does come back. I personally don't want to see him get moved to the bullpen if he's the odd man out of the rotation. Like I do think it's just harder as the organization as pitching depth to have him go back down to AAA and to stay stretched out. Like I don't know if there's specific things he needs to work on at the AAA level, right? Like when you talk about with Matt Shaw when he debuted earlier this year, he went down and there were things that they were like, we need to see this out of you. We need to see this develop and progress out of you. I don't know if that's necessarily what I don't know if that's necessarily what Ben Brown would be doing down in AAA. I think the main thing would be just him staying stretched out. Of course, like you want to see him dominating those AAA hitters. Like that's if he's down there, you need to see that. But I don't think it's a thing where, hey, we're sending you back down because we need you to improve on this or progress on this. I think at this point, Ben Brown needs to be doing that at the major league level. But if it comes to where Shota's healthy and you need an odd man out and Ben Brown's the choice, in my opinion, it would probably be better to have him go back down to AAA and just stay stretched out. I think that's the best case if that's the route they decide to go down. And then the other side is what happens to Colin Ray, right? Like, if is he the guy that's the odd man out of the rotation? Like, obviously, he doesn't have options left. You gave him, I think, a $5 million contract before the season. He proved to be pretty good pitching depth. Another guy that stepped in when injuries hit and has done a pretty good job overall, right? I think the last was it 4 starts. He does have a 7.08 ERA. He only went 4 1/3 his last time out. That was his shortest start since the first start that he made for the Cubs this year when he was kind of still building back up after starting the year in the bullpen. So I will say, like, he probably hasn't been the last few times out as good as he was for most of this time since he stepped into the rotation. But, he has been a pretty solid part of that rotation overall throughout the year. That could be the route that the Cubs decide to go down. Whereas, as far as, you keep, obviously you add Shota to the rotation, Tyone's in there, Matthew Boyd's in there, you keep Cade Horton, you keep Ben Brown. Like, that could be the five that you go with. Then obviously the question of what do you do with Colin Ray? Well, you could put him back in the bullpen, of course, but then you have to kind of figure out what to do with the rest of the bullpen arms, right? Like, Porter Hodge is pretty close to coming back. He'll need a spot in that rotation. They don't have a ton of optionable guys in the rotation or in the bullpen right now. And like a Daniel Palencia does have options, but he's pitched really well. He's kind of emerged as a really strong late inning option for the Cubs team right now. So, like, do you want to send him back down to AAA? Like, that obviously adds more questions and answers that need to be had if Colin Ray is the odd man out. So I don't know what the Cubs do when the time comes. Of course, again, that's probably like a couple weeks or so away at this point. And again, like, these things do tend to have, they tend to work themselves out. I'm sure there'll be more, they'll probably be, or I don't want to say probably, I guess we'll knock on wood for that because I said that, but there could be another injury somewhere in the bullpen or the rotation, which kind of helps answer this question, right? It's possible. And we'll see when the time comes, what route the Cubs decide to do. But in a way, I think it's kind of a good problem for the Cubs to have, right? Like, it's a good problem to have so many options that you're coming down to hard decisions to make. That's the ideal place you want to be in as an organization, as a team that's trying to make the postseason this season for the first time in 5 years, for the first time in a full season since 2018, right? That's a good position to be in where you have good options, good depth, and you're not 100% sure what to do at this point, right? A couple years ago, that's probably not the case for the Cubs. They didn't, or like 2022 specifically. That's probably not the case for the Cubs if they're adding a guy like Shota Imanaga back in the rotation. It's not the case right now, and I think it's not a bad spot for the Cubs to be in. It's going to be a position where they kind of have to make potentially a hard decision, but you'll see. I think it's kind of a thing where you cross that bridge when you get there. I just wanted to bring it up because I think it's something that should be on the mind as Shota Imanaga continues to recover and rehab and make his rehab starts and all that stuff. It's important to keep in mind, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens when that time comes. So moving on from the starters, and this is the last topic of the day. I've talked a lot about Pete Crow-Armstrong on this podcast, a lot about what he's done, of course, in the field, on the base paths, but specifically at the plate, and just all the things that he's done. And he's still going. As I'm recording this right now, he's 69 games into the season. He's got a 137 WRC plus, which is tied for 24th in the majors among qualified hitters. 3.7 FWAR, third in the majors, first in the National League. I think it was like 22 stolen bases. I didn't write the number down, but got a lot of stolen bases. He got the second most stolen bases in the league. So he's still doing all these things that have made him such a valuable player so far this year. But the power surge is just, it's eye-opening to see the power that he's displayed so far this year. I don't think anyone necessarily expected that to happen. I mean, he probably did. Yeah, I haven't talked to him yet, but he probably like knew he had it in him, right? I don't know if a lot of people thought that Pete Crow-Armstrong could be slugging and hitting for power the way that he has so far in the first 70 games of the Cubs season. Here's some of his numbers. He's got 18 home runs on the year. That's tied for seventh in the major leagues. And actually, in the minor leagues, across the minor league season, only in 2023 did he have more. Did he end up with more home runs than his 18 right now? He had, I think it was 20 home runs in 2023 and across 107 games between Tennessee and Iowa. So right now he, of course, has 2 fewer home runs than he did across that season. But you're talking about almost 40 fewer games and against major league pitching, not double A and triple A pitching, against major league pitching. That's very, very. He's going to pass that number unless something happens where he just can't hit for power for a while. He's going to pass the amount of home runs he had that season well before he reaches the number of games that he played that year. So, and he's doing it at the major league level. That's super impressive to see from a guy that, he doesn't look like he doesn't have like the body type of like this major power hitter, right? I think people can agree with that, but you've heard like Jet Hoyer and folks talk about it. Like he's athletic. He's fast twitch. He can get to that power. It's been surprising, but very good to see out of this guy as he just continues to emerge. Right, he's doing all these other things: the base running, the fielding, hitting. I think he's got a solid average so far this year, but the slug, the power, the home runs, like that 18 home runs tied for seventh in the major leagues, right? That is, if you told me that was going to happen before the season, I probably wouldn't have expected, or I probably wouldn't have believed you. But that's just kind of what he's done. Some more numbers. He has a 278 isolated power. That's slugging minus batting average. That's seventh in the major leagues. He's slugging 549 right now. That's ninth in the major leagues. And coming into Friday, because these are StatCast numbers, haven't updated yet, but he's in the 89th percentile with expected slugging at 524, 86th percentile at barrel rate, which is 14.4%. He's more in the middle of the pack when it comes to average exit velocity and hard hit rate, but like all that combined, like he's just hitting for a ton of power that we didn't necessarily expect to see out of him this year, and it's I keep coming back to like, because of the base running, because of the fielding, like the idea was kind of that if he could give you a 15 to 20 and maybe 20 and a little bit more home runs every year, he's going to be a super valuable player, right? He's doing that and more, and that shows in the wins above replacement that he's already stacked up this year through his own 69 games, but 70 Cubs games. Again, 3.7 F4, and that's first in the National League. Like that's all that put together with the power that we didn't necessarily come to expect. He's played like a superstar so far this year. Again, I'll say that I don't know if I can call him a superstar yet, just because it is so early in his career. We're not even halfway done with this season. Like there may be, maybe I'm just being conservative in that sense, that I don't necessarily want to give him the superstar label just yet, but he's playing like one, and that's probably more than you could have asked for him this year. You wanted to see him take a step forward this season, especially when you're talking about helping the Cubs and Jed Hoyer's, outperforming expectations or projections. He's done that. He's beyond that. He's played beyond just outperforming projections. He's played beyond taking a next step. He's taken 15, 20 steps forward. It feels like he's doing so much. He's playing like a Gold Glove center fielder. He's wreaking havoc on the bases, and he's hitting like a guy who's just completely figured it out at the major league level and is hitting for more power than a lot of us would have expected or even thought he could do. So it's props to him. I do want to point out also the fact that he's hitting balls for home runs, right? Like they're like bad pitches like the whole idea is you don't want to swing at bad pitches. Like be make pitchers work. If they throw a ball, don't swing like that. All that kind of stuff. That's a very simple baseball thing to say. Pete Crow-Armstrong, and you can see it on like his Statcast numbers. He does chase a good amount. He's got a higher strikeout rate than you want. Um, he's not afraid to swing at a lot of those pitches, and sometimes it's to his detriment, right? Sometimes you see him just swinging and missing at really bad pitches, but then you have him going. Was it on Thursday, and hitting a home run on a pitch 3.90 feet above the ground, like just well high of the strike zone. Against, I want to say it was still Andrew Heaney on the mound, it was lefty on lefty, and he goes up and this a pitch that you shouldn't swing at, realistically, like a pitch you shouldn't swing at, high above the strike zone, and he goes and he hits it for a home run. That's super impressive to see from a guy. Again, lefty on lefty matchup. It's a bad ball, a clear ball, and he goes out and slugs and hits it for a home run. And then you combine that with the home run he hit against the Brewers. I don't remember what day when that was, but that was like less than a foot off the ground. It was like 0.8 something feet above the ground, like well below the strike zone that he golfed out of the ballpark. And I think that was actually the home run that Brewers fan, the angry Brewers fan with the cutoff, came from, that meme. But like you combine those two, and you kind of feel like there's no bad pitch for Pete Crow-Armstrong because he can get to it and he can slug it. And I will still say, like, you don't want him swinging at those pitches all the time, of course, but it is super impressive to see when he does swing at it and is able to take it for a ride. Like that's super impressive to see. But again, it's part of like the surprising power output that he's put out this year. And then I really like this quote from Craig Counsell, which he told reporters afterwards on Thursday. This is Craig Counsell again, manager of the Cubs. What you've seen in 30 years of baseball says it's hard to hit balls for home runs. He has proven me wrong. You're talking about a guy who's been in baseball for about 30 years now, and he's seen a lot of stuff. He's played on World Series teams. He's played with a lot of great players. He's managed a lot of really good players throughout his managerial career, and he's saying that Pete Crow-Armstrong is doing things. He's basically saying that Pete Crow-Armstrong is doing things that he hasn't seen done before, things that general baseball would say can't be done. He's doing it, and he's not doing it all the time, but he's doing it sometimes, and that's eye opening. That's opening eyes. That is showing you why he was such a hyped prospect when he was in the minor leagues, and why you don't give up on the guy when he struggles. His first stint in the big leagues, and even for the last 3 months of last season, or the first 3 months of last season, or whatever it was, it's another example of why you don't give up on that guy, why you believe in the ability and the it factor that he has, right? He's got the it factor. He plays like a star. He carries himself like a star. Soon enough, I will give in and say he is a star. But he's doing a lot of things that, again, no one necessarily expected out of him this season, and that's been super cool to see, super impressive to see. And I remember, my last podcast saying that, he deserves to be in the All-Star game. And if the season ended today, he would definitely get MVP votes. Just continues to prove that that's true. That I at this point, like, I'd be kind of shocked if he's not starting in center field for the National League All-Star team in a month. And again, the MVP vote's so far away, but if he stays at this level, he's putting himself in serious consideration for getting a ton of votes, if not winning it. I'm not saying he's going to win it, but like, he's putting himself in that position where um, it wouldn't be a complete shock if he's at least finished as a finalist. So it's a credit to him for continuing to do the things we already knew he was good at, but also doing things that we didn't necessarily think he could do. And that's the power, that's the home runs, it's the slugging, it's all that stuff. So props to Pete Armstrong. I am, just like I said with Cade Horton, I'm very intrigued and interested and looking forward to seeing just how Pete Armstrong continues to follow up the performance he's already put together. So that will pretty much do it for this week's Addison the 35th podcast Cubs episode. The Cubs do have two more against the Pirates to end this weekend. Off day Monday, then they welcome the Brewers for 3 and the Mariners for 3. So longer homestand, of course, for the Cubs before they go out on the road again. I'll say, like, you want to win this series, of course, against the Pirates. Like it will feel like a disappointment if you split this series against the Pirates. You want to win that series against the Brewers, who are right behind you, not right behind you, but they're the team behind you in the division standings. And the Mariners are another good team that you want to go and take 2 of 3 from. So, yeah, that'll do it for the Addison the 35th podcast today. Again, I'm your host, Ryan Herrera, for this Cubs episode. Tune in for my guy, Herb Lawrence, who does a lot of Sox episodes and does a great job with those. And if you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, please subscribe, review, 5-star rating, all that stuff. And if you're watching on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, tell all your friends, tell your neighbors, tell your family. We've appreciated all the support we've gotten already. We'd appreciate even more. So please go do all that good stuff. And until I talk to you guys again, have a good one.